So today we're talking about road injuries, and to do that we're joined by Principal Lawyer for Road Injuries at Maurice Blackburn, Carolyn Kovac. Hello, Carolyn.
Hello, thanks for having me, Joe.
It is really lovely to speak with you because I've learned a lot already from our conversations. So, you represent people who have experienced a road injury. Can you tell us what kind of injury does that mean and why do they come to see you?
Look, the thing about road accidents is that unfortunately they can happen to anyone. They don't discriminate, and I see young children right up to the elderly. If you think about an average day in your life, at any given time, you may be a pedestrian, you may be a driver, you may be a passenger in a car or on a tram or a train. So everyone is, exposed to the possibility of a road accident. I see people who have also witnessed accidents or who have lost a family member or have had a family member injured in an accident as well. Um, Sometimes people will escape from an accident with very minor injuries only, but unfortunately, many times that's not the case. And I've seen people who've suffered very significant and sometimes catastrophic injuries that have completely changed their life. Um, so, why they come to see a lawyer? My experience has been that most people will come to me because usually their income support has been stopped or they've been refused a medical treatment which they really need. But ultimately, the big cause is that they're in financial distress. And generally, understandably, people are quite reluctant to come and see a lawyer. They're fearful about having to engage with a lawyer because of the cost, and also just the real emotional distress that can be caused by talking about a very traumatic event to a stranger, no less. So when people see me, they're not often aware of the full extent of their rights under the law and what compensation is available to them to help support themselves and their families. Um, so in Victoria, where I practice as a lawyer, we have a hybrid compensation scheme, which is a no fault compensation scheme which provides no fault benefits. So, regardless of whose fault the accident is, there are there are some basic entitlements that you can access in terms of income loss, medical treatment, and also a small lump sum compensation if you'd suffered a permanent injury. And then there's also the opportunity to sue a negligent driver if you have suffered what we call a serious injury. And what a serious injury is can often be contentious. And again, that's why you need to see a lawyer often in these cases.
But the opportunity for compensation isn't the same all around the country, is it?
Yes, that's right. The law does vary significantly from state to state. So, depending where you are in Australia, you'll have different entitlements. And that's really important to realize because, if you're planning on going on a road trip or if you're going to be traveling extensively in another state by road or on a hire car, it is important to know what this compensation scheme is in that relevant state and to make sure that you're looking at good travel insurance policies, what you can do. Sometimes there are insurance products attached to superannuation, which could provide a good top up depending on what is available in the different compensation schemes.
I'm amazed to hear that because I went on a very extensive road trip around Northern Territory, didn't even look into what would have been available to me or my family should we have had an accident, and that they're quite dangerous roads.
That's right, particularly in the Northern Territory. And in that area, of course, there is no common law rights at all. There are some limited no fault benefits that you can access, but the ability to sue for the pain and suffering and future loss of earnings and other things which you need, which can't be covered by a no fault system, are not available to you. So it's
Wow.
really important if you're going to go on these trips that you have really good travel insurance policies in place.
So essentially, though, if I have experienced an injury on the roads, I need to explore what the situation is in my state. I would then go to see a lawyer. And I understand that when someone approaches you who've experienced an injury, you have to then carry out quite extensive investigations to know exactly what happened. How do you do that?
Yeah, look, this is quite common in road accidents. I've seen many clients who, over the years, who have suffered head injuries, and often they can only remember up to the morning of the accident. For example, when the accident may have happened that night. I recently resolved a claim for a client who suffered a very serious acquired brain injury as a result of an accident. Um, the accident occurred very early in the morning, and he was the victim of a hit and run, was left on the road only to unfortunately be hit again by another vehicle who stopped and rendered him assistance. And he had no memory of the accident at all and was very badly injured. So, in that instance, my role was to do as much detective work as possible, involved contacting, talking to witnesses who had volunteered their names to police, reviewing police reports, ambulance reports, listening to emergency call transcripts, if any of those had been made, reviewing medical material, sometimes getting an expert medical opinion, getting an accident reconstruction expert. There's a lot of work that needs to go on to really establish your case. And ultimately, it is up to the injured person who's bringing their case against a negligent driver to prove their case. The evidence test used by the courts is that you have to prove on the balance of probability that the accident has occurred in the way you say it has. And because the onus is on the injured person to do this, it's really essential that the evidence is collected, ideally, as soon as the accident has occurred. Because what we often see is witnesses who are asked to provide a statement 1 or 2 years down the track, they've just started to forget the details. They start to doubt their memory, and sometimes they might not remember it at all. And look, independent witnesses are really important for the success of your case, particularly if you're an injured person who has no recall of what's happened. So it's really for this reason that we recommend that you really should start the investigation following your accident as soon as possible.
So, what if I've experienced a pretty minor accident and at this point I don't think that I'm very badly injured? Would it be your advice to seek, legal advice just in case? Would you sort of start that process just in case then it unfolds that you need some kind of compensation?
Absolutely. My strong advice is always seek advice from a lawyer if you've been involved in an accident. Do it as soon as you can. At Maurice Blackburn, I act for injured people on a no-win, no-fee basis. So there's no fees or costs associated with just meeting for a lawyer for the first time. There's no obligation to pursue your case, but at least you've been properly advised of all your options. And if you take that first step and see a lawyer, you're empowered to make the right decision for yourself. And you've been armed with the right information and advice. And look, what starts off as a small injury, unfortunately, can sometimes turn into a big problem. I had a client who was a driver who was rear ended at high speed by another vehicle. He didn't need to go to hospital at the time, but he had a very sore neck. He saw his GP, and the GP said, "Look, it's a whiplash injury. It's understandable. You're going to be sore. We'll see how you go. It'll take you a few weeks to recover. If not, we'll have some physiotherapy." But things didn't improve for my client, and he started to get some tingling sensations in his hands and his fingers, and the GP didn't think it was necessary to his accident, and he continued to recommend this conservative treatment, which was reasonable at the time. But what he didn't know was that this minor case of whiplash was actually not that at all, and it progressed into an incomplete paraplegia with catastrophic consequences for my client and his family. Um, Thankfully, in this case, we were able to obtain the relevant information we needed from witnesses. The trail hadn't gone cold in terms of evidence and proving his case. The factual circumstances in this case were relatively straightforward too. But had this been a hit and run scenario, or had the circumstances been disputed, by the time he realised he needed a lawyer because his minor injury wasn't getting better, it may well have been too late, or made the gathering of evidence really difficult. The other thing I'd say is I've also had clients who've had minor physical injuries, which just haven't got better, and then they've gone on to develop some really significant psychological symptoms to the point that they've gone on to develop major depression or significant PTSD or anxiety. And living in the presence of constant pain can take a huge mental toll on somebody. It affects people's ability to sleep, to carry out their usual activities of daily living. And when people are unable to work for long periods of time, it can be very isolating and a really lonely experience. So again, what starts out as what we think is a fairly standard and non-controversial physical injury can have really unforeseen significant psychiatric complications too.
And when you talk about psychiatric injuries, I understand that you can claim if you have witnessed some kind of incident on the road.
Yes, you can. If you have witnessed the immediate aftermath of an accident, and you suffer a psychological injury as a result, which is entirely understandable given the traumatic nature of what you've witnessed, if you then go on to suffer symptoms of an injury in your own right, you will have a claim for compensation if it's causing you to have symptoms which need medical treatment or time off work.
So, Carolyn, I'm really interested to know how you manage as a lawyer when people come to see you. What kind of state are they in at this point? And how do you assist them, I guess? And what kind of outcome do they really hope for? I mean, obviously, the compensation is one thing, but are they seeking justice?
Look, I think most people who come and see me following an accident are equal parts shock, anger, and fear. They're at their most vulnerable. Not only are they trying to cope with what are often crippling symptoms of pain, they're worried about their family and the fact that they're not able to work. They're preoccupied with the large number of medical appointments that they have to attend to try and get better. They're trying to protect their family members and friends from what they're going through. And they're really at a complete loss as to what to do or where to start. And then the loved ones of someone who's been in an accident, they're often very angry and want justice for what's happened. Um, Sometimes they want the person at fault to pay or just to say sorry for what has happened. It's not always possible to achieve this, and that can be hard news to give. But ultimately, I think that the people who do come to see me are really trying to regain a sense of control and autonomy over their situation. And I think this is a really important thing to do. And they do this, it's important to do this through improving your health, of course, and recovering the best that you can from your injuries, but also understanding what you can do legally to protect yourself financially, just to take those big financial worries away.
Well, I understand then from this conversation that your number one piece of advice would be don't hesitate and don't wait to ask for help and advice.
Absolutely. Look, when you've been injured in an accident, it's essential that you build a support network around you. That can be obviously your family and your friends, of course, but also your health professionals and your lawyer. It's never too soon to see a lawyer, and there's no such thing as a dumb medical or legal question. The sooner you see a lawyer, the better, because they can put things in place to ensure that if you do need to sue, that if you do need to have a dispute about your income or your medical treatment, the appropriate evidence collection's already begun, and you're best placed to properly bring a successful claim. So, look, ultimately, it's really important that you surround yourself with people that you trust, and who have your interests your interests at heart, and you have the freedom of choice in relation to health professionals and your lawyer. So, if you don't feel comfortable, and or supported, you can change things up, but make sure you're engaging in your recovery with the support of a good doctor and also the support of a lawyer, because it will make all the difference in the world to your recovery and your financial security for yourself and for your family and loved ones who are there by your side in all this.
Well, once again, we say thank you to Maurice Blackburn for their amazing advice, and we thank you, Carolyn Kovac, who is, of course, the principal lawyer for road injuries at Maurice Blackburn. Thanks so much for your time, Carolyn.
Thanks, Joe.